Pan Am Flight 914 departed from New York City Airport for Miami in July 1955. Yet the plane never arrived in sunny Florida. The jet and its 57 occupants seemed to vanish into thin air without sending out a distress signal or leaving behind even the slightest piece of wreckage. The majority of people believed the mystery would never be resolved as the years went by without any indication of the missing plane. However, 37 years later, the unthinkable occurred. Grab some popcorn and watch to find out what that unbelievable event was. Subscribe to AWZ to see the videos we have waiting for you in the future. Air traffic controllers were going about their duties one morning in 1992 at an airport in Caracas, Venezuela, when they saw something quite odd. Despite the fact that their radars displayed an empty sky, they could clearly see a jet speeding toward the airport. As it drew closer, they realized that this plane was an outdated, propeller-driven design that hadn't been in use for years. Immediately after making radio contact with the pilot, traffic controller Juan de la Corte asked him to name the unidentified aircraft. "This is Flight 914, the pilot said, "and it is about to land in Miami." The pilot was astonished to learn he had somehow flown 1,200 miles from his target and that things were about to get much worse when Juan told him this was an airport in Venezuela. Witnesses saw passengers crowded up to the windows when the plane touched down, dressed oddly in vintage attire, and gazing bewilderedly at the modern aircrafts on the tarmac. The pilot of the unidentified aircraft requested Juan to confirm the date after a long period of quiet, and Juan responded that it was May 21, 1992, in a scratchy voice. He could hear the pilot's rapid breathing as he was speaking, plainly in anxiety. After a short while, the pilot threw open the cockpit window and started furiously waving the ground personnel away while yelling that he had to leave. Something fluttered from the clipboard he was holding in one hand as he waved his arms. The aircraft crew watched in disbelief as, just minutes after everything had occurred, the mysterious aircraft sped off down the runway before soaring away into the sky. But before anybody could respond, the plane was in motion. To his surprise, Juan hurried to the runway and grabbed the paper that had dropped from the pilot's clipboard. He could see that it was a 1955 calendar. Following the incident, aviation officials were able to conclude that the mystery Flight 914 that had vanished in the 1950s was actually the unwelcome runway visitor. However, despite a comprehensive investigation, they were unable to explain the plane's unexpected reappearance, and the aircraft itself was never seen again. How therefore can the time-traveling aircraft be explained? The most widely held hypothesis among followers of this intriguing story is that the plane unintentionally entered a wormhole through time and space, sending it 37 years in the future. If you believe that sounds absurd, it's important to note that mathematical proofs for the existence of wormholes have been provided by the scientific theories of scientists like Albert Einstein and Stephen Hawking. But how effectively can you picture time and space as a sheet of paper with a point at either end? Normally, the only way to get through those locations would be to move along the paper. However, if you fold the paper in half, bringing the spots together, it will move you between them much more quickly. This is how a wormhole functions in theory. No one is really sure how a wormhole could come into being, nor has anyone actually witnessed as anybody ever actually observed a wormhole as a space-time bending shortcut through the cosmos that connects two distant points of space and/or time. Could the time-traveling planes riddle be solved by this hypothesis? If you believe wormholes were responsible for this riddle before we expose the truth, click the like button. Let's immediately ascertain the truth. As it turns out, the true explanation can be understood without using complex physics. That's because, sadly, the story of Pan Am Flight 914 is a vintage piece of false information that was first spread by the Weekly World News in 1985. This tabloid was infamous for fabricating bizarre tales to sell papers, such as the claim of a child born with a wooden leg and the untrue account of a guy who sued himself after being struck by his own boomerang. Actually, the story of Flight 914 made such an impression in the 1980s that the tabloid repeated it in 1993 and 1999. It quickly turned into a hoax that was spread online by conspiracy theorists as proof of time travel. The case of Flight 914 was ultimately revealed to be a hoax. But that doesn't mean that our world hasn't seen its fair share of journeys that turned out to be quite weird. Of course, we wouldn't bring you here with a promise of genuine mystery and not deliver. It's probable that the planes lost their bearings after their leader's compasses failed, forcing everyone to take off at once. Running out of fuel and entering the water. Compasses weren't error-proof in the 1940s, after all, especially in light of the large electromagnetic fields that may accumulate around aircraft during bad weather. Others believe that because of the poor visibility, Taylor might have confused the Florida Keys for the Bahamas, prompting him to mistakenly steer the aircraft further out to sea rather than back toward land. And with regard to the rescue effort, the aircraft were Martin PBM Mariners, which were known to accumulate dangerous fuel fumes. The rescue plane disappeared from radars, but a neighboring tanker reported seeing flames close by, suggesting that it may have detonated due to these flammable gas buildups. In addition, the Bermuda Triangle is not the mysterious vanishing vortex that some believe it to be, according to scientists. Contrary to popular belief, disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle don't seem to occur more frequently than they do in any other comparable area of the Atlantic Ocean. But despite all of that, no wreckage has ever been discovered. Unconfirmed is Flight 19's actual fate. What do you believe transpired? Tell us in the comments section below.